If you had told me a year ago that my own family would betray me, I would have called you crazy. My dad had always been stern but fair, and my stepmother, Margaret, though distant at times, was never outright cruel. But everything changed when my half-sister Leah got involved. She didn't just lie. She destroyed everything I'd worked for, my relationships, my reputation, my life. Leah came into the picture when I was 10, after my dad remarried. She was born a few years later, and from the moment she could talk, she knew how to get what she wanted. Margaret spoiled her rotten, and my dad went along with it. Leah was the princess of the house, the golden child who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the independent one, left to fend for myself. At first, I didn't mind. I wasn't particularly close to my stepmom or Leah, but I figured that was normal. I was a teenager trying to survive high school, while Leah was still in elementary school. We had nothing in common, but as the years went on, I began to notice little things. Leah's talent for playing the victim, the way she'd twist situations to make herself look good, and how easily she could manipulate Margaret and Dad. It started small. Leah would make comments like, "Emma's been staying out late," or "I'm worried about Emma. She seems distracted." Dad and Margaret didn't seem too concerned at first. I was 24, living on my own and figuring out life after college. I didn't have a curfew to break or anyone to answer to. But Leah kept planting seeds of doubt, and I didn't realize how deep her lies were growing. The breaking point came one Friday evening. Dad called me, his voice tense. "Emma, we need to talk," he said. "Can you come over?" I assumed it was about something minor, maybe a family issue they wanted my advice on. I never expected to walk into an ambush. When I arrived, Margaret was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed like a judge ready to deliver a verdict. Leah was next to her, looking far too innocent. "Emma," Dad began, "Leah told us something troubling. Are you using drugs?" I blinked, sure I had misheard him. "What? No. Where is this coming from?" Margaret's cold stare cut through me. "Leah said she found pills in your room when you stayed over last weekend." Panic set in. Leah hadn't been in my room. At least I didn't think she had. My visits home were rare and brief, and I always kept my personal items packed. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "Leah, why are you lying?" Leah's big doe eyes filled with fake concern. "I'm not lying, Emma. I'm just worried about you. You've been acting so strange, and I didn't know how else to help." Her words made my stomach churn. I turned to Dad, pleading, "You know me. I've never touched drugs in my life." But before he could respond, Margaret piled on. "It's not just the pills. Leah also mentioned that you've been associating with questionable people. Emma, are you selling yourself?" The room spun. My legs felt like they might give out. "What?" I managed to choke out. "How could you even think that? Leah's lying." But my protest fell on deaf ears. Dad rubbed his temples, his face a mix of frustration and disappointment. "Emma, we do want to help. If you're in trouble, we need to know." "I'm not in trouble," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Leah is making this up." Leah sniffled, her crocodile tears on full display. "Emma, I'm just trying to help. I don't want you to end up like some of my friends who got into bad things. I care about you." It was like watching a play unfold, one where I was the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. Margaret shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Until you can be honest with us, we can't trust you." I looked at my dad, hoping for a shred of doubt, a flicker of support. But he only said, "Emma, maybe some space will help. For all of us." That was their way of saying they didn't want me around anymore. I left the house that day, feeling like a stranger to my own family. Leah's lies had taken root, and nothing I said could pull them out. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. The days after that disastrous confrontation felt like free-falling without a parachute. I replayed every second of the encounter in my head, wondering where it had all gone so wrong. How could my dad, the man who used to cheer me on at soccer games and teach me how to change a tire, believe such outrageous lies? How could Margaret, who'd once treated me like her own, turn so cold? And Leah, how could she do this to me? I called my dad the next day, determined to make him see reason. "Dad, please, you know me. You know I'd never do the things Leah is accusing me of." My voice cracked, but I pushed through. "She's lying, Dad. You got to see it." His response was like a punch to the gut. "Emma, we love you, but this isn't about Leah. It's about you. Until you can admit what's really going on, we can't help you." Admit what? That my life was spiraling because of Leah's lies? That wasn't the help I needed. That call ended like all the others, with Dad insisting I get help and hanging up before I could defend myself. Leah didn't just stop at turning my family against me. She made it her mission to ruin every part of my life. She told neighbors I was a drug dealer, and soon, people I'd known for years started looking at me differently. My boss, who'd always praised my work ethic, called me into his office one morning. "Emma, I've been hearing some concerning things," he said, fidgeting with a pen. "I can't have someone with issues representing this company." "Issues? What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rising. He sighed. "Look, I don't know if it's true, but the rumors are enough. We have to let you go." I left the office that day in a daze, clutching the box of my belongings like a lifeline. Leah's lies had cost me my job, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they cost me more. The final nail in the coffin came a week later. My dad called, his voice filled with that same hollow pity that made my skin crawl. "Emma, we've made a decision. We can't have you around Leah anymore. She's been through enough because of your behavior. Until you sort yourself out, it's best if you stay away." "Stay away?" I repeated, my voice trembling with disbelief. "Dad, I didn't do anything." "Leah is lying." "We love you, Emma," he said, his tone as firm as it was dismissive. "But this is for the best." That was it. My own father had chosen Leah's lies over me. I packed my things and moved in with Jessica, a friend who offered me her couch while I tried to figure out my next steps. But no matter how much I wanted to leave it all behind, Leah's lies stuck to me like tar. Every job interview ended in rejection. Friends who once cared stopped answering my calls. Even strangers in town seemed to look at me with suspicion. The walls of my world were closing in, and there was no way out. One night, lying awake in Jessica's cramped apartment, I thought about confronting Leah. I imagined showing up at my dad's house, pointing out all her manipulations, and making her admit the truth. But I knew how it would go. She'd cry, twist the story, and somehow turn it all back on me. Jessica tried to be supportive. "Maybe you should just leave," she suggested one evening. "Start fresh somewhere else. Get away from all this." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but she was right. Leah had poisoned everything in this town. My relationships, my reputation, my future. The only way forward was to leave it all behind. So I packed up the few things I had left and moved to a new city where no one knew my name. I told myself this was my chance to rebuild, to start over. For a while it felt like it might work, but Leah wasn't finished with me yet. The move to a new city felt like hitting the reset button on my life. It wasn't glamorous. I worked long hours at a modest marketing firm and lived in a tiny apartment that barely fit my hand-me-down furniture, but it was mine. After the chaos Leah had unleashed, I craved simplicity and anonymity. At first, everything seemed fine. My coworkers were friendly, and my boss appreciated my work. Yet, I couldn't fully relax. Every now and then, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting Leah's lies to follow me here. It was irrational. I knew that, but the paranoia had dug deep. What if someone from my past stumbled across my new life and started talking? Jessica, bless her, remained my lifeline. "You need to stop looking back," she said during one of our weekly phone calls. "They're your family, Emma. Maybe they've realized what Leah did by now." I wanted to believe that, but every time I remembered the way my dad looked at me that day, like I was a stranger, or worse, a liar, I couldn't bring myself to reach out. If they wanted to apologize, they knew how to find me. Despite the lingering scars, I managed to carve out a life for myself. I made new friends, threw myself into my work, and even started going on dates again. One of those dates turned into something more. Noah was everything I hadn't realized I needed. Steady, kind, and patient. He didn't push when I kept the details of my family vague, and he didn't pry when I got quiet during certain conversations. Instead, he just let me be, offering me a safe space to exist without judgment. A year later, Noah proposed. It wasn't a grand, over-the-top gesture. We were sitting on my couch, eating takeout and watching a terrible movie, when he turned to me, held out a ring, and asked me to be his forever. Tears streamed down my face as I said yes. For the first time in years, I felt like I had something to look forward to, a future untangled from the mess of my past. We planned a small wedding with just close friends and his family. My life was finally my own, and I wasn't going to let anything ruin it. But, of course, the past doesn't stay buried for long. 2 weeks before the wedding, as I sat finalizing last-minute details, a notification popped up on my laptop. It was an email with a subject line that stopped me cold. "I'm sorry." It was from my dad. The subject line of the email alone was enough to shake me. "I'm sorry." It was from my dad, a name I hadn't allowed myself to think about in over a year. My first instinct was to delete it, to protect myself from reopening a wound I had fought so hard to heal. But curiosity won. With a deep breath, I clicked it open. "Emma," it began. "I've thought about you every day since you left. I know we made a terrible mistake believing Leah over you, and I can't tell you how sorry I am for everything that happened. I froze. For years, I had imagined what an apology might sound like, but seeing the words in front of me felt surreal. He went on to explain how Leah's lies had unraveled over time. Apparently, she hadn't stopped at me. Her manipulation continued, affecting friends, co-workers, even Margaret. Eventually, her web of deceit had collapsed under its own weight, and the truth came spilling out. I heard through a friend that you're getting married, he wrote toward the end. I'd love to be there to walk you down the aisle, like I always imagined. Please, Emma, give me a chance to make this right. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. This was the apology I had wanted, wasn't it? But now that it was here, it felt wrong. Hollow. Where was this guilt when I begged them to believe me? Where was this desire to fix things when I was homeless and jobless, trying to rebuild the life Leah had destroyed? I closed my laptop and paced the room, my emotions spiraling. Relief, anger, confusion, it all hit me at once. Noah found me sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. What's wrong? He asked, concern etched on his face. I handed him my phone with the email open. It's from my dad, I said simply. Noah read it, his face unreadable as he scrolled. When he finished, he set the phone down and looked at me. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to give him a chance, but what if it's just more of the same? What if I let him back in and it hurts even more? Noah nodded thoughtfully. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But this is your day, Emma. You've built a life without them. You don't owe anyone anything. His words echoed in my mind as I sat down to draft a reply. I typed and deleted a dozen responses, struggling to find the right balance between guarded and open. Finally, I wrote something simple. Thank you for your apology. I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not ready to forgive everything that happened. If you'd like to attend the wedding, you can, but Leah and Margaret are not welcome. I hit send before I could overthink it. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my dad. When my phone rang and my dad's name appeared on the screen, I stared at it for a long moment. I knew what this call was going to be about, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. But avoiding it wouldn't make it go away. So with a deep breath, I answered. Emma, he began, his voice cautious but tinged with warmth. Thank you for replying to my email. It means more than you know. I didn't say anything, waiting for him to get to the point. I could hear the hesitation in his voice as he continued. I want to be there for your wedding. But he paused, and my heart sank. Are you sure you don't want to invite Leah? There was the words I'd been dreading. My stomach clenched as the fury bubbled beneath the surface. No, Dad, I said firmly. She's not welcome. You know why? He sighed, the weight of it heavy enough to cut through the silence. Emma, she's your sister. She knows she made mistakes, and she's trying to make amends. This could be a chance for us to come together as a family. I felt my control slipping. Come together as a family? I repeated, my voice rising. Dad, Leah destroyed my life. She turned you and Margaret against me with lies. Lies, Dad. And you believed her. You can just move past that because she's suddenly sorry. It's not about moving past it, he insisted, his tone almost pleading. It's about healing. I don't feel right coming to your wedding while excluding one of my daughters. I can't do that, Emma. It wouldn't feel right. The words hit me like a slap. So, it's her or me? I asked, my voice trembling, the pain bleeding through despite my attempt to stay strong. Emma, don't see it like that, he said, his voice cracking. I don't want to lose you, but I can't turn my back on Leah either. She's trying to change. I let out a bitter laugh, the sound surprising even me. You already turned your back on me, Dad. Don't you remember? When you kicked me out of the house. When you believe her lies without a second thought. You made your choice back then, and now you're making it again. That's not fair, he protested weakly, but his voice lacked conviction. What's not fair? I shot back, my voice sharp and raw. Is you asking me to sacrifice my happiness for someone who didn't just ruin my life, but reveled in it? If you can't come to my wedding without Leah, then don't come at all. I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking as the phone clattered onto the table. The tears came fast and hard, a mixture of rage, grief, and exhaustion. I had just severed what was left of the fragile bond between us, but I knew I had done the right thing. For me, for my peace, for my future. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Between last-minute arrangements, dress fittings, and fielding questions from vendors, I had little time to dwell on my father's ultimatum. But when the quiet moments came, the ache in my chest was impossible to ignore. I kept telling myself I had made the right decision. My father had chosen Leah again, and that wasn't something I could overlook. Still, as I worked on seating charts and picked out table centerpieces, I couldn't help but imagine how different things could have been if he'd chosen me for once. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling a mix of excitement and dread. Rachel, my maid of honor, bustled around, making sure I had everything I needed. She handed me a glass of champagne as I got my makeup done. "You're going to have the most beautiful day, Emma," she said. "Forget about everyone who isn't here. You got a room full of people who love you." Her words were comforting, but they didn't erase the pang of sadness I felt as I slipped into my dress. Standing in front of the mirror, I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the joy of the day. Noah was waiting for me at the end of the aisle, and that was all that mattered. When the ceremony began, all my doubts faded. Noah stood there, beaming, his eyes brimming with love as I walked toward him. My heart swelled with a happiness I hadn't felt in years. As we exchanged vows, I realized how far I'd come. This wasn't just the start of a marriage. It was the start of a life I had fought hard to rebuild. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. My friends and chosen family showered us with love and support, making the day feel complete despite the absence of my biological family. Noah held my hand throughout the night, whispering little reassurances whenever he caught me looking wistful. By the end of the evening, as we danced under a canopy of twinkling lights, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I truly believed I could leave the pain of the past behind. I didn't need my father or Leah to feel whole. I had built a life filled with love, and that was enough. 2 months after the wedding, I was beginning to feel a sense of stability in my new life. Noah and I had settled into a rhythm, and for the first time in years, I could focus on the present without being weighed down by the past. But that fragile peace shattered with a single voicemail. It was from Margaret. Her voice, once so cold and judgmental, was now trembling and frantic. "Emma, it's Margaret. Please call me back. It's Leah. She's in the hospital. She tried to hurt herself. Please, we need you." I played the message twice, the words hitting me like a freight train. Leah, the sister who had turned my family against me, the reason I'd been kicked out and vilified, was now in such a dark place that she had tried to end her own life. My immediate reaction was a wave of disbelief and, to my surprise, pity. But it was quickly followed by anger. After everything she'd done, how could Margaret think I was the person they needed? I avoided calling back right away, needing time to process. That evening, I sat down with Noah and told him about the voicemail. His brow furrowed as he listened, concern evident in his eyes. "She wanted to go see Leah," I said, my voice flat. "What do you want to do?" Noah asked carefully, his hand resting over mine. "I don't know," I admitted, my emotions tangled. "Part of me feels guilty, like I should be there, but the other part, after everything she's done, I don't owe her anything." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Emma, you've worked so hard to move on. You don't have to reopen that wound for anyone. If you feel like going will set you back, it's okay to say no." His words were logical, but the guilt still gnawed at me. Leah had made my life hell, but now she was vulnerable, broken. Did I have a moral obligation to be there for her? Or would going just drag me back into the toxicity I'd fought so hard to escape? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling and replaying Margaret's voicemail in my head. Her voice was pleading, desperate, but it was the same voice that had sided with Leah and cast me out. Did they really want me there for Leah's sake? Or was this another manipulation to make me forgive them all? The next morning, I made my decision. I wasn't going. The morning after Margaret's voicemail, I made my choice. I wasn't going to call her back. I wasn't going to visit Leah. For years, I had carried the weight of their betrayal, the scars of their rejection, and the consequences of their blind trust in Leah. Now that they were facing the fallout of their own choices, I refused to let them drag me back into their mess. Still, I couldn't help but feel the faint sting of guilt creeping in. Leah's lies had devastated my life, but the thought of her being in such a dark place unsettled me. Was I heartless for staying away? Or was I finally standing up for myself? Noah noticed my unease as I picked at my breakfast. "You okay?" he asked, setting his coffee down. I shrugged. Margaret called again. This time it was about Leah being in rehab. She admitted to everything, apparently. "They want me to visit her." Noah raised an eyebrow. "And what do you want to do?" "I don't want to go," I said firmly. "I've spent too long trying to move on. I'm not going to let them guilt me into undoing all the progress I've made." "Good," Noah said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You don't owe them anything. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." But the calls didn't stop. A few days later, my father left a message. His voice was calm, but the desperation was evident. Emma, it's Dad. I know you're hurt, and I understand why. Leah's admitted to everything. She's taking responsibility for her actions. She wants to make amends, and I think it would mean a lot to her if you visited. This could be a chance for us to heal as a family. Family. That word stung like a wound reopened. Where was this family when they kicked me out of the house? When they believed Leah's lies without a second thought? Now that the truth had come out, they wanted to pretend everything could be fixed with a simple visit? I deleted the voicemail without responding. Over the next few weeks, more messages followed. Margaret called again, tearfully begging me to come see Leah. Even Leah herself left a message, her voice shaky and hesitant. Emma, I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'd really like to see you. I stared at the phone, conflicted but resolute. Each call, each message was a reminder of the pain, and I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. One evening, as Noah and I sat down for dinner, he brought it up again. Do you think you'll ever go back? I thought about it for a long moment, weighing the years of hurt against the faint hope of reconciliation. Finally, I shook my head. No, some things can't be fixed, and I'm okay with that. For the first time, I truly meant it. The silence from my family was both a relief and a mystery. After months of voicemails and guilt-ridden pleas, the abrupt end felt almost unnatural. I wondered if they'd finally accepted that I wasn't coming back or if something else had caused the shift. Either way, I wasn't about to chase after answers. Life with Noah was everything I had hoped for. We spent lazy Sundays planning trips we'd take one day. Italy, New Zealand, the national parks we hadn't yet explored. Our conversations about the future were filled with excitement and possibility. We dreamed about a home with a big backyard, a couple of dogs, and maybe even kids. It was the kind of life I'd always wanted but had never thought was possible for me. Occasionally, Leah would creep into my thoughts. I'd wonder if rehab had been a turning point for her or just another act in her endless performance. Did she genuinely want to make amends? Or was she simply trying to regain control of the narrative? The truth was it didn't matter. I wasn't willing to reopen old wounds to find out. One evening, Noah and I were curled up on the couch, sharing popcorn and watching a rerun of one of our favorite shows. He glanced over at me during a commercial break, a soft smile on his face. You seem lighter, he said. I feel lighter, I admitted. For so long, I thought I needed them to validate me, to believe me, to apologize, to see me. But I don't. I have everything I need right here. His smile widened as he pulled me closer. You've come a long way, Emma. I'm proud of you. For the first time in years, I let those words sink in. He was right. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I was stronger for it. But just when I thought the past was behind me, it found a way to resurface. The letter from my father was a crack in the dam I had so carefully built around my emotions. For years, I had hardened myself against the pain he and Leah had caused me. Now, holding his apology in my hands, I felt the weight of something I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. His words were unlike anything I'd ever expected. Raw, remorseful, and filled with regret. He admitted to believing Leah's lies without question, to failing me when I needed him the most. He acknowledged the deep hurt his actions had caused and the irreversible damage done to our relationship. For years, I'd imagined what it would feel like to hear those words. I thought it would bring me relief, maybe even joy. Instead, I felt hollow. His apology was sincere, but it didn't erase the years of abandonment and betrayal. I wasn't sure anything could. That evening, I showed the letter to Noah. He read it quietly, his brow furrowed as he absorbed my father's words. What do you think? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He set the letter down carefully, meeting my eyes. I think it's good he finally sees what he did to you. But the real question is, what do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. I want to believe he's being genuine, and part of me wants to write back. But another part of me is still so angry. I've spent so much time trying to move on without him. Do I really want to open that door again? Noah nodded thoughtfully. You don't have to decide right now. Take the time you need. Just remember, whatever choice you make, it's for you, not for him. Over the next few days, I wrestled with my emotions. I reread the letter until the words blurred together, trying to untangle what I felt. Did I want to forgive him? Did I even want him in my life again? Eventually, I sat down and wrote a response. It wasn't long or overly emotional, but it said what I needed to say. Dad, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your apology, and I'm glad you've come to understand the pain that Leah's lies caused. I'm also happy to hear that she's working to rebuild her life. That said, I've worked hard to build a life of my own, one free from the hurt of the past. While I can't offer forgiveness right now, I wish you the best as you navigate your own healing. Emma. When I dropped the letter in the mailbox, a sense of calm washed over me. For the first time, I felt like I had taken control of my narrative. My father's apology didn't fix the wounds he had left, but it gave me the closure I needed to fully let go. Sometimes, healing isn't about reopening old doors or rekindling lost relationships. Sometimes, it's about recognizing your worth, setting boundaries, and choosing to walk forward stronger than before. After sending the letter, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. It wasn't about reconnecting or repairing the relationship. It was about finally releasing the grip of the past. For years, I had let my father and Leah define so much of who I was. Now, for the first time, I felt like I was living for myself. Life with Noah became my anchor. We focused on the little joys, quiet mornings with coffee, spontaneous weekend getaways, and making plans for the future. We talked about starting a family one day, but for now, we were content building a home filled with love and understanding. One afternoon, Noah and I were sorting through old boxes in the attic, a task we'd been putting off since moving in. Among the dusty belongings, I found a stack of photo albums from my childhood. I hesitated before flipping through them, unsure if I was ready to face the memories. Noah noticed my pause and sat beside me. "Want to go through them together?" he asked gently. I nodded, and together we opened the first album. There were pictures of my dad teaching me how to ride a bike, birthday parties with cake smeared on my face, and vacations where we all smiled like we didn't have a care in the world. It felt like looking at a different life, one where things were simpler, happier. "Do you miss them?" Noah asked after a while. I thought about his question, running my fingers over the edges of a photo of me and Leah as kids. "I miss the idea of them," I admitted. "The version of my family I thought I had. But the reality? No, I don't miss that." He squeezed my hand, understanding without needing to say a word. A small step. A few weeks later, I received another letter in the mail. This time it was from Leah. My instinct was to toss it in the trash, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it carefully, unsure of what to expect. Her handwriting was neat but shaky, as though she'd rewritten the words several times. "Emma, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, and I don't blame you if you don't. What I did to you was unforgivable, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Therapy has forced me to confront the person I was, and I hate what I see. I was jealous of you, your independence, your confidence, your life outside of the family. I thought if I tore you down, I'd feel better about myself. But all I did was ruin the best thing I ever had. You were a good sister, and I destroyed that. I don't expect you to respond or to believe that I've changed, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Leah." I folded the letter and set it aside, unsure of how to feel. Leah's words seemed sincere, but sincerity didn't erase the damage she had done. Her jealousy had cost me so much, and while I didn't wish her harm, I wasn't sure if I was ready to offer her anything more than silence. For the rest of the day, the letter lingered in my thoughts. Eventually, I decided to show it to Noah. "What do you think?" I asked after he read it. "I think she's trying," he said carefully. "But that doesn't mean you owe her forgiveness. You get to decide what's best for you." His words stayed with me. Forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation, and it didn't mean I had to let her back into my life. That night, I tucked Leah's letter into the same box as my father's. I wasn't ready to respond, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either.